The first scream didn't sound real. That was the strange part. It didn't explode out of the darkness the way screams do in movies. It crept. It slid along the walls of the tunnel like something alive, thin and shaking, as if the sound itself was afraid to exist. For a second, all three of us just stood there frozen, staring into the black mouth ahead, trying to understand what we had just heard. Then it came again, louder this time, clearer, human. I remember thinking that if we turned around right then, if we pretended we never heard anything, I could still go home and sleep that night. I could still tell myself this was just another Sleeptime story idea that never happened. But none of us moved. The tunnel pulled at us, not physically, but in a way that felt worse. Like a question you can't ignore once it's been asked. The tunnel had been sealed for decades, or at least that's what the locals said. It ran under the old hills beyond the city, left behind from a forgotten railway project that was abandoned after several workers died during construction. People talked about cave-ins, gas leaks, bad luck. Some talked about worse things, but always quietly, always with a nervous laugh at the end, like they didn't want the tunnel to hear its name spoken out loud. That was why we were there in the first place. Stories like that tend to follow you when you run a channel built on creepy horror stories, bedtime fear, and sleeptime mysteries. We'd heard the rumors, read the comments, received the emails from people swearing something still lived down there. We told ourselves we were just chasing atmosphere. Just sound. Just shadows. I was wrong. My name is Adam, and I narrate horror stories for a living. Or at least, that's what I tell people. The truth is, I collect fear. I listen to it. I shape it into words and send it out into the dark where other people listen while trying to sleep. That night, though, fear wasn't something distant or imagined. It stood shoulder to shoulder with me at the edge of that tunnel, breathing the same cold air. Ben was the first to react. He always is. He's the practical one, the guy who double-checks batteries and memory cards and laughs when things get tense. He lifted the flashlight slowly, as if fast movement might scare the darkness into doing something worse. The beam cut into the tunnel and vanished after a few meters, swallowed completely. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, even though whispering made no sense anymore. Lena didn't answer right away. She was staring into the tunnel, her jaw tight, her eyes narrowed like she was trying to focus on something just beyond the light. Lena has a way of noticing things other people miss. Sounds out of place. Shapes that don't belong. That's why we trust her instincts. And that's why what she said next made my stomach drop. "It's not echoing right," she said. "That scream, it's not bouncing back." Before I could ask what she meant, the scream came again. This time it wasn't just fear in the sound. There was pain. There was urgency. Someone was down there. Someone alive. And they were screaming for help. Every rule you're supposed to follow in places like this screamed in my head all at once. Don't enter abandoned tunnels. Don't follow voices you can't see. Don't assume you understand what you're hearing. But those rules are easy to remember when the danger is theoretical. When there's a real human voice crying out from the dark, all those rules start to feel small and selfish. "We can't just leave," Ben said, already stepping forward. I wanted to stop him. I really did. But the words stuck in my throat, because part of me wanted to go too. Not for the channel, not for content, but because if I were down there, trapped, screaming into the dark, I would want someone to follow the sound. The tunnel smelled old. Damp stone, rusted metal, something sour underneath that I couldn't identify. Each step we took sent soft crunching sounds under our boots, gravel shifting like bones. Our flashlights carved narrow paths through the darkness, but everything beyond those beams felt heavy. Watching, waiting. The scream came again, closer now. Or maybe we were closer to it. It was hard to tell. Sound behaves strangely underground. It bends. It lies. "Hello," I shouted, my voice echoing back at us in broken pieces. "We hear you. Where are you?" For a moment, there was nothing. Just the sound of water dripping somewhere deep inside the tunnel. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, quickly followed by shame. Maybe we imagined it. Maybe it was just wind or animals or the tunnel settling. Then a voice answered. "Please," it cried. "Don't leave." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. That made it worse. It sounded exhausted. Weak. Like whoever was speaking had been screaming for a long time. Lena grabbed my arm, so hard it hurt. "Adam," she whispered, "that voice, it doesn't sound like it's coming from one place." I listened again, really listened. The words seemed to slide along the walls, coming from ahead, behind, and somewhere right beside us all at once. My skin prickled. Ben kept walking. We followed the sound deeper into the tunnel, each step taking us farther from the entrance, and the thin slice of night sky behind us. The air grew colder. The walls narrowed slightly, forcing us closer together. Every so often, we passed old equipment half buried in rubble, abandoned like the workers had simply dropped everything and run. The screams stopped. That was almost worse than hearing them. Without the sound to guide us, the tunnel felt endless. Our footsteps became too loud, every movement exaggerated by the silence. I tried to convince myself the person had passed out, that maybe they were just ahead, waiting for help. That thought kept my legs moving when fear tried to lock them in place. Then we saw the markings on the wall. At first, I thought they were scratches. Long, uneven lines carved into the stone, some deep enough to catch the flashlight beam and throw it back at us. But as we got closer, I realized they weren't random. They formed shapes, symbols. Tall, thin figures with arms stretched too long, mouths open wide. "These are fresh," Ben said quietly. "How can you tell?" I asked. He touched one of the marks and pulled his hand back quickly. The stone dust hasn't settled yet. A low sound drifted through the tunnel, not quite a scream, not quite a voice. More like a breath forced through a throat that didn't work properly. It came from deeper inside, pulling us forward again despite everything screaming at us to turn around. Lena stopped walking. "I don't like this," she said. "The screams earlier, they were calling us. But this sound? It feels like we're interrupting something." The tunnel opened into a wider chamber ahead, the ceiling rising higher than our lights could reach. The sound was coming from there. As we stepped inside, our flashlights swept across the space, revealing something that made my heart pound, so hard I thought I might pass out. There were footprints everywhere. Not just one set, dozens. Some overlapping, some circling the center of the chamber. They went in every direction, but none of them led back toward the entrance. All of them pointed deeper into the tunnel system. "Where did they go?" Ben murmured. Before anyone could answer, the scream returned, right behind us. I spun around so fast I nearly fell. My light shook, bouncing wildly across the walls. For a split second, I thought I saw a shape standing where we had just walked from, tall and thin, pressed flat against a stone. Then the light steadied, and there was nothing there. "Don't turn around," the voice whispered. It sounded closer than it should have. Too close. My mouth went dry. "Who are you?" I asked. The voice laughed softly, and the sound crawled under my skin. Someone who followed the screams, too. The chamber lights flickered, as if the darkness itself was breathing. I realized then that the tunnel hadn't been abandoned. Not really. It had been waiting. And we had answered the call. Somewhere deep in the tunnel, something shifted, heavy and slow, as if a massive body was adjusting its position. The walls seemed to close in, the air pressing against my ears until they rang. Lena's grip tightened on my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "We need to leave," she said, her voice shaking. "Now." But the entrance we had come from was gone. Or maybe it was still there, hiding just beyond what our lights could show us. Either way, the darkness between us and the outside felt thicker, more solid, like a door slowly closing. The voice spoke again, softer now, almost kind. "You came because you heard me," it said. "That means you can hear the others too." All around us, from tunnels we hadn't noticed before, whispers began to rise. Crying, pleading, screams layered on top of each other until I couldn't tell where one ended and another began. My head throbbed, my thoughts scattering like insects. Ben took a step backward and bumped into something. He froze. "Adam," he whispered, "there's someone standing behind me." I raised my flashlight slowly, my hand shaking so badly I could barely keep the beam steady. The light crept up from the ground, illuminating torn boots, dirty legs, a torso twisted at an angle that didn't make sense. Then the light reached the face, and the screaming stopped. All at once. The silence that followed was absolute, crushing, like the tunnel was holding its breath. The figure's mouth opened slowly, wider than any human jaw should open, and I understood then that the screams weren't coming from someone trapped down here. They were coming from the tunnel itself. And it had finally found someone new to follow. The light flickered again, and just before it went out, the thing smiled at us and whispered one final word that echoed through the darkness long after the sound should have faded. Stay. The word echoed longer than it should have, stretching thin until it felt like it was being pulled through the walls themselves. When the light finally died, the darkness didn't rush in. It settled. Calm. Certain. Like it knew we weren't going anywhere. None of us spoke at first. Breathing felt loud, dangerous, like the tunnel might hear it and respond. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, each pulse counting down to something I didn't want to meet. Somewhere close, stone scraped softly against stone, a slow dragging sound that made my skin tighten. Then the flashlight flickered back on. Ben's hands were shaking so badly the beam jumped across the chamber, flashing over walls, footprints, and empty space. The figure was gone. No twisted body. No impossible smile. Just cold air and silence. It was right there, Ben said, barely louder than a breath. I didn't imagine that. I saw it too, I said quickly. You're not alone. Lena didn't say anything. She was staring at the ground, her light fixed on the footprints again. She knelt slowly, brushing loose dust aside with her sleeve. These aren't old, she said. Some of them are ours. That didn't make sense. We'd only just stepped into the chamber. I looked closer, and my stomach dropped. Mixed in with the dozens of footprints were 3 sets that matched our boots exactly. Same tread, same size, same spacing. But they were ahead of us. How is that possible? I asked. Lena swallowed. Either we've been here longer than we think, or time doesn't work the same way down here. A low hum filled the chamber, barely audible, like a distant engine or a voice trapped behind thick walls. The sound vibrated through my chest more than my ears. I had the sudden, irrational urge to cover my face, like the tunnel could see me better if I didn't. Ben checked his camera out of habit, then laughed nervously. Batteries draining fast, he said. It was full an hour ago. We haven't been here an hour, I said. He looked at me. Exactly. We decided to keep moving, not because it felt right, but because standing still felt worse. The chamber had multiple branching tunnels, each one dark and narrow, each one whispering softly in a way that made it impossible to tell where sound was coming from. Every path felt like a wrong choice. As we walked, I remember the emails. The messages people sent late at night, claiming they'd heard screaming near old tunnels, abandoned mines, places swallowed by time. Most of them followed the same pattern. Curiosity, concern, then silence. I'd always assumed the silence meant fear had passed. Now I wondered if it meant something else entirely. The tunnel we chose sloped downward, the floor uneven and damp. Water dripped steadily from above, tapping out a slow, uneven rhythm. With each step, the hum grew louder, turning into something almost like voices layered on top of one another, all speaking too quietly to understand. Lena walked closer to me now, her shoulder brushing mine. Adam, she said softly, do you feel like this place knows us? I did. I didn't want to admit it, but I did. The tunnel felt personal, like it was responding to our presence rather than just existing around us. When Ben stumbled, the sound seemed to change pitch. When I spoke, the echoes lingered longer, almost repeating my words back with a delay. Maybe that's how it hunts, Ben said, overhearing us. By learning. We reached another chamber, smaller than the last, with walls covered in writing. Not symbols this time. Words. Names. Dates. Messages carved deep into the stone, overlapping and frantic. Help me. IT followed the voices. Don't trust the silence. Some messages were written neatly, carefully spaced like someone trying to stay calm. Others were jagged and uneven, letters cut so deep the stone had cracked. These people were here a long time, I said. Long enough to leave records. And none of them got out, Lena added. As if responding to her words, the whispers stopped. The silence that followed pressed down on us, heavy and complete. My ears rang. I realized I could hear my own thoughts, racing and messy, filling the space the tunnel had abandoned. Then the screaming returned. Not behind us. Not ahead. All around. It wasn't one voice anymore. It was many, layered and tangled, rising and falling like waves. Men, women, children, all calling for help, all overlapping until the words blurred into raw sound. Ben covered his ears. "Make it stop," he said. "Please, just make it stop." I wanted to scream back, to ask what it wanted, to demand answers. But something deep inside me warned against it. This place fed on responses, on attention, on acknowledgement. Through the noise, one voice stood out. Calm. Familiar. Mine. I froze. The scream that rose above the others wasn't a scream at all. It was my voice calling Ben's name, calling Lena's name, calling from deeper in the tunnel. "That's not me," I said quickly. "I didn't say that." Lena stared at me, eyes wide with fear. "It sounds exactly like you." The tunnel pulsed again, the walls trembling slightly, dust falling from above. For a moment, I had the clear, horrifying image of the tunnel breathing, expanding and contracting like lungs drawing us deeper with every cycle. "This thing," Ben said slowly, "it doesn't just copy voices. It copies people." The idea settled over us like cold water. The markings, the footprints, the messages. Maybe the tunnel didn't trap people physically at first. Maybe it learned them, wore them, used them to call the next ones in. A soft footstep echoed ahead. Then another. Slow, careful, human. A figure appeared at the edge of our flashlight beam, just far enough that the details stayed blurred. It raised a hand in a familiar gesture. "Thank God," it said. "I was afraid no one would come." It was Lena's voice. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I looked at the real Lena, standing beside me, her face drained of color, her lips trembling. The figure took a step closer, still wrapped in shadow. "We followed the screams," it said gently. "Just like you." And somewhere deep beneath the stone, the tunnel hummed again, louder than ever, as if pleased we were finally starting to understand. The figure stopped just at the edge of the light, as if it knew exactly how far to come, without revealing too much. It tilted its head the same way Lena does when she's trying to read a room. That small detail unsettled me more than the voice itself. It wasn't just copying sound. It was copying behavior. "Don't listen to it," the real Lena said, her voice tight but steady. "It's trying to pull us apart." The other Lena smiled, a soft, relieved expression that would have looked normal anywhere else. "Why would you say that?" it asked. "I'm right here. I'm scared. Just like you." Ben shifted his weight, torn. I could see it in his face. This thing wasn't threatening us outright. It was doing something worse. It was asking for trust. "We need proof," Ben said, trying to sound logical. "If you're really Lena, tell us something only she would know." The figure didn't hesitate. "You hate the sound of people chewing," it said gently. "You still keep the old compass from your dad in your backpack. And you never go underground without counting your steps on the way in." Lena's breath caught. My stomach sank. Those weren't guesses. Those were memories. "How does it know that?" Ben whispered. The tunnel answered before anyone else could. The hum deepened, vibrating through the soles of my feet. The walls seemed closer now, the ceiling lower, like the space was tightening around the conversation. "I told you," the thing said. "This place listens." I felt a sudden wave of anger cut through the fear. "You're not her," I said, stepping forward before I could stop myself. "You're just wearing her voice." The figure turned its attention to me slowly. When it spoke again, it used my voice this time. "Isn't that what you do?" it asked. "You wear other people's fear. You turn it into stories. You invite listeners into the dark and leave them there when the video ends." The words hit harder than I expected. Because they were true. For a moment, I wondered if the tunnel wasn't just copying us, but judging us, feeding us pieces of ourselves we didn't want to look at. I thought about all the times I'd asked people to share their scariest experiences, their trauma, their sleepless nights, and package them as content. I told myself it was harmless, comforting even. The tunnel seemed to disagree. The figure took another step forward, and this time the light touched its face. It looked exactly like Lena. Same eyes, same scar near the eyebrow. But something was wrong with the expression. The smile lingered too long. The eyes didn't blink. The real Lena backed away, instinctively. "Adam," she whispered, "it's not just copying us. It's trying to replace us." Behind the figure, the tunnel stretched on, darker than before. I noticed shapes moving there, barely visible, like silhouettes pressed into the stone. Faces, hands, bodies that didn't fully separate from the walls. "Those are the others," the thing said, following my gaze. "They followed the screams too. They stayed." Ben shook his head. "No," he said. "You trap them. You take them." "Nothing is taken," it replied calmly. "Everything is given. Curiosity, compassion, the need to help. You walked in because you wanted to." That part was impossible to deny. Another voice joined the hum, then another, until the chamber filled with overlapping whispers. Some begged us to stay. Others warned us to run. A few sounded calm, almost peaceful, like they'd accepted whatever this place had turned them into. Lena covered her ears again. "It's overwhelming us," she said, "trying to drown out our thoughts." As if responding, the voices shifted. The screams softened into something quieter, more intimate. Conversations, laughter, familiar sounds from our lives. I heard my mother calling me in for dinner. I heard Ben's sister teasing him. I heard Lena humming under her breath the way she does when she's nervous. Tears burned my eyes. It took everything I had not to step toward those sounds. "We can't trust anything we hear," Ben said, his voice breaking. "We need to rely on each other." The tunnel didn't like that. The floor trembled slightly, just enough to throw us off balance. Dust rained down as cracks crept along the walls, glowing faintly in our flashlight beams. The figure's smile faded. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," it said. "You're already part of the story now. This is a place for sleeptime stories, for bedtime fears, for echoes that never fade." I realized then that the tunnel wasn't just feeding on fear. It was feeding on attention, on belief, on the act of listening itself. Every scream, every whispered warning, every story told about this place made it stronger. "Is that why it calls?" Lena asked quietly. "Because people who hear it can't ignore it." "Yes," the figure replied. "And neither could you." Ben glanced back toward the way we'd come, his light cutting through the darkness. The path behind us looked different now. Longer, twisted. The walls seemed to curve inward, bending the tunnel into something unfamiliar. "We're not going to win by fighting it," he said. "And we're not going to win by listening." "Then how?" I asked. Before he could answer, a new scream tore through the chamber. Raw, panicked, real in a way the others hadn't been. It came from far away, deeper than any sound before. A different voice. A new one. The figure stiffened, its borrowed face flickering like a bad reflection. For the first time, it sounded uncertain. "That's not mine," it said. The tunnel shuddered again, harder this time. The whispers grew chaotic, overlapping and confused, as if something had disrupted the pattern. Lena met my eyes. "Adam," she said, "what if we're not the only ones who heard it tonight?" The idea sent a fresh wave of dread through me. If someone else had entered the tunnel, if someone else was following the screams right now, then this wasn't just about us surviving. It was about what would be left behind to call the next ones in. The figure stepped back into the darkness, its voice fading but still present, wrapping around us from every direction. "Choose carefully," it whispered. "Every step you take becomes another echo." The lights flickered again, and the chamber seemed to stretch, opening into multiple paths at once. Each one pulsed with distant sound, each one promising answers or escape or something worse. We stood there, caught between voices, fear tightening its grip, knowing that whatever choice we made next would pull us deeper into the tunnel story. And the screams were getting closer. The new scream cut through everything else like a blade. It didn't echo the way the others did. It didn't slide along the walls or blend into the hum. It stayed sharp, directional, real. Someone was panicking, running out of breath, their voice cracking in a way no imitation could perfectly recreate. Ben turned toward the sound immediately. "That's a real person," he said. "You can hear it." The tunnel seemed to resist that idea. The walls pulsed again, the whispers rising as if trying to drown the scream out, but it kept breaking through, uneven and desperate. For the first time since we entered, the place felt unsettled, like something had disrupted its rhythm. The figure's voice no longer came from one spot. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. "You don't understand," it said, calmer but strained. New voices confused the others. "They don't belong yet." Yet. Lena snapped. "You're waiting for them to belong?" The floor beneath us vibrated, stronger this time. Pebbles skittered across the stone. Somewhere deeper in the tunnel, something heavy shifted, followed by a deep groan that sounded like the tunnel itself protesting. I had a sudden, awful thought. What if the screams aren't bait? I said slowly. What if they're warnings? No one answered, but the silence felt heavy with agreement. The new scream came again, closer now. We could hear footsteps with it, frantic and uneven. Whoever it was, they were running blindly through the dark, following sound just like we had. "We have to reach them first," Ben said. "If it gets to them." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The paths ahead of us shifted again, the tunnel splitting and curving in ways that made my head hurt to look at. Each passage carried sound differently. In one, the scream sounded close. In another, distant. In a third, it faded into soft whispering, almost comforting. "It's trying to mislead us," Lena said, "testing which voice we'll follow." "And whichever one we choose," I added, "it learns more." The figure reappeared briefly at the edge of the light, not wearing Lena's face this time, but Ben's. Same nervous smile. Same worried eyes. "You can save them," it said in Ben's voice. "Just come this way." Ben flinched like he'd been struck. "Don't," I said quickly. "It wants us separated." The bench-shaped figure tilted its head. "Or maybe I want you together. Maybe I want witnesses." The word sent a chill through me. Witnesses to what? The scream suddenly spiked into a cry of pure terror, followed by a hoarse shout. "Hello? Someone please answer." That decided it. Ben bolted toward the left passage, the one where the scream sounded raw and close. The tunnel reacted instantly. The hum surged, the walls trembling, dust pouring down as if in anger. "Ben!" Lena shouted, chasing after him. I followed, my flashlight bouncing wildly, heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. The passage narrowed quickly, forcing us into single file. The air grew colder, thicker, pressing against my chest with every breath. The scream was right ahead now. We burst into another chamber, smaller and lower than the others. The ceiling dipped unevenly, cracked and sagging, supported by rusted beams. In the center of the room, a man stood hunched over, hands on his knees, gasping for air. He looked young. Early 20s, maybe. Dirt streaked his face, his eyes wide and glassy with fear. When he saw us, relief washed over his features, so fast it hurt to watch. "Oh, thank God," he said. "I thought I was losing my mind." I heard voices and... "Don't listen to anything except us," Lena said firmly, stepping closer. "What's your name?" "Mark," he said. I was exploring with my phone. I heard screaming and tried to help. Then everything started sounding wrong. My stomach sank. Same story. Same mistake. Behind us, the tunnel fell silent. Too silent. Ben glanced back, his face pale. "It's not following," he whispered. "It's waiting." Mark frowned. "Following what?" Before we could answer, the whispers returned, soft and gentle now, wrapping around the chamber like a blanket. They sounded calm, reassuring, like people talking quietly in the next room. Mark's shoulders relaxed slightly. "You hear that?" he asked. "It's telling me where the exit is." "No," I said sharply. "That's not real." But he was already turning, his eyes unfocused, drawn toward a narrow opening we hadn't noticed before. The tunnel changed again. The walls seemed closer, the ceiling lower, the space shrinking as if reacting to Mark's attention. The whispers grew warmer, more personal. "You're safe now," a voice said softly. "Just a few more steps." Lena grabbed Mark's arm. "Listen to me," she said. "It's lying." Mark looked at her, confused. "Why would it lie? It knows my name." That sent a shock through me. "It knows all of us," I said. "That's how it works." The whispers deepened, turning into overlapping voices, some pleading, some comforting. I heard my own voice again, calm and steady, narrating, guiding, inviting. "This is how stories end," the tunnel seemed to say, "with someone staying behind." The floor shuddered violently. One of the rusted beams above groaned, dust and small stones raining down. The chamber felt unstable, like it might collapse or seal itself shut at any moment. Ben shouted over the noise. "We don't have time. Adam, it's choosing." I realized then that the tunnel wasn't just feeding on fear or curiosity anymore. It was forcing a decision. Someone had to stay. Someone had to become another echo to let the rest pass. Mark screamed as the whispers grew louder, clutching his head. Lena held on to him with both hands, her face strained with effort. "I won't let it take him," she said through clenched teeth. The voices surged, angry now, no longer gentle. The walls vibrated so hard my teeth rattled. In the chaos, the figure's voice rose above everything else, no longer pretending to be anyone we knew. "Every story demands a sacrifice," it said. "Who will it be?" The lights flickered wildly, plunging us into brief flashes of darkness and light. In one of those flashes, I saw shapes pressing out from the walls again, reaching, waiting. The scream that followed wasn't Mark's. It came from deeper in the tunnel, and the sound of my name coming from the dark stole the air from my lungs. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't screamed. It was spoken softly, with a kind of familiarity that only comes from someone who has known you for a long time. "Adam." The tunnel went still, as if listening to itself. Ben stared at me. "That wasn't you, right?" he asked, though his voice already carried the answer. I shook my head slowly. My throat felt tight, like something had wrapped itself around it. "No." The voice came again, closer now, calm and steady. "You don't have to be afraid. This is where it always leads." Lena's grip on Mark tightened. "It's targeting you now," she said. "You're the narrator. You give meaning to what happens here." That realization hit harder than anything else so far. The tunnel didn't just want bodies. It wanted stories. It wanted someone who could turn fear into something that lasted, something that traveled far beyond these walls, someone who could keep the echoes alive. The whispers shifted, rearranging themselves around that idea. I heard fragments of my own videos, lines I'd recorded late at night in a quiet room, now twisted and layered into the tunnel's breathing. "Tonight's story," the walls murmured. "Listen closely. Don't look away." Mark let out a broken sob. "Make it stop," he begged. "Please." The floor lurched suddenly, knocking us off balance. I caught myself against the wall, my palm scraping over cold stone. When I pulled my hand back, I realized something had changed. The surface beneath my fingers wasn't solid anymore. It felt soft, warm, almost like skin. I recoiled instinctively. The tunnel wasn't just listening anymore. It was responding. The voice calling my name grew clearer, more distinct. Footsteps echoed toward us from the deeper passage, slow and deliberate. Whatever was approaching wasn't rushing. It knew we were trapped. "I think it's learning faster now," Ben said quietly. "Because of Mark. Because of us." The figure emerged into the flickering light again, but this time it didn't borrow Lena's face or Ben's. It wore mine. Same height, same posture, same tired eyes. Even the scar on my chin was there, exactly where it should be. Seeing myself standing there in the tunnel felt unreal, like looking into a mirror that showed a version of me that belonged in this place. "You finally hear it clearly," it said in my voice. "That's good. It means you're ready." "Ready for what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. To stay, it replied. To tell the story from the inside. The whispers swelled, filling the chamber with sound again, but this time they weren't chaotic. They were focused, almost reverent, like an audience waiting for the next line. Lena shook her head violently. No, you don't get to decide that. The thing that looked like me smiled. I don't have to. He already has. The tunnel pulsed, and suddenly images flooded my mind that weren't mine. People sitting alone in dark rooms. Headphones on. Eyes half closed as my voice guided them through fear. Countless listeners connected by sound, by trust. The tunnel wasn't just underground. It was everywhere my stories had ever been heard. This place doesn't end at the rock, the figure said. It ends where listening begins. Ben stepped in front of me, without thinking, putting himself between us and the thing wearing my face. You're not taking him. The figure looked almost amused. I already have pieces of all of you. Mark cried out suddenly, dropping to his knees. It's inside my head, he said. It's showing me things. Things that haven't happened yet. What do you see? Lena asked, panicked. Mark looked up at us, tears streaming down his face. I see this tunnel empty. I see your voices still here. I don't see you. The ceiling groaned loudly, cracks spreading outward like veins. Dust and small stones fell in steady streams now. The chamber was reaching its limit, either about to collapse or transform into something worse. The tunnel seemed impatient. Time, it said, through every voice at once. Decide. Paths opened around us again, but fewer this time. One led deeper, darker, where the hum was strongest. Another sloped upward slightly, faint air movement brushing against my face like a promise of escape. Only one of them felt real. Lena looked at me, eyes shining with fear and determination. Adam, she said, don't listen to it. Whatever it's offering, it's a lie. The version of me in the tunnel tilted its head. Is it, it asked, or is it the ending you've been building toward all along? The whispers rose again, louder than ever, pressing into my thoughts, my memories, my voice. I felt something inside me pulling toward them, like a part of me recognized this place, this role. The scream of my name echoed one last time, so close it felt like it was coming from inside my chest. And in that moment, as the tunnel waited for my choice, I realized the most terrifying truth of all. The story didn't need me to stay. It needed me to agree. The tunnel waited, and for the first time since we entered, I understood that waiting was its greatest strength. It didn't need to chase us. It didn't need to force anything. It only needed agreement, belief, a voice willing to carry it forward. I took a slow breath and stepped toward the version of myself standing in the dark. Lena shouted my name, panic breaking through her control. Ben reached for my arm, but I raised my hand, not to stop them, but to steady myself. My heart was racing, yet my thoughts felt strangely clear. You don't need me, I said to the thing wearing my face. You never did. The tunnel hummed, confused for the first time. You said it yourself, I continued, my voice echoing cleanly instead of breaking apart. This place feeds on attention, on listening, on stories being told. But stories end when the teller chooses silence. The thing frowned. Just slightly. Silence is still a response. Not the kind you need, I said. I turned away from it and looked at Mark, who was curled in on himself, shaking. I knelt beside him, blocking his view of the shadows. Mark, I said gently, listen to me. Only me. Not the walls. Not the voices. His eyes focused on mine, desperate. It keeps showing me futures. Then let me show you the present, I said. We're here. You're not alone. And we're leaving. The tunnel reacted violently. The hum spiked into a roar. The walls convulsed, cracks racing outward. The figure screamed, not in anger, but in something closer to fear. You can't take them all, it said. Someone has to stay. I stood up slowly. No, I said. That's the lie you've been telling yourself. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my recorder. The red light was still on, blinking weakly. I raised it toward the tunnel, toward the voices, toward the thing that wanted my agreement. You want my voice? I said. Then take it. I pressed stop. The effect was immediate. The whispers cut off mid-syllable. The hum collapsed into a low, broken vibration. The walls shuddered as if the tunnel had lost its balance. The figure staggered backward, its borrowed face flickering, features slipping like a bad reflection in water. "No," it whispered. "You can't end it here." "I can," I said. "Because stories don't live without listeners." The passage behind us opened fully for the first time, air rushing through it like a breath released after years of holding. The scream vanished. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was empty. Ben grabbed Mark, hauling him to his feet. Lena took my hand, grounding real. Together, we ran. The tunnel fought us all the way out. The floor buckled. The ceiling cracked. Shadows lunged from the walls, stretching but never quite reaching. The thing screamed behind us now, its voice splintered into fragments of every sound it had ever stolen. We didn't look back. When we burst out into the night air, the tunnel collapsed behind us with a sound like a door slamming shut forever. Dust billowed upward, then settled. The entrance was gone, buried beneath stone and earth as if it had never existed. For a long moment, none of us spoke. We just breathed. Cold air. Real air. Mark dropped to his knees, sobbing with relief. Ben laughed, the sound shaky and broken. Lena wrapped her arms around me so tightly it hurt, and I welcomed the pain because it meant I was still here. We left before dawn, none of us willing to stay near that place any longer than necessary. Mark was taken to a hospital. He never stopped thanking us. He never talked about the voices again. Neither did we. Weeks passed. Life tried to return to normal. Ben stopped filming. Lena refused to go underground ever again. As for me, I didn't record another story. Not one. Silence felt safer. Until one night, while cleaning my equipment, I found the recorder. The battery was dead. The casing cracked. It shouldn't have worked. But when I plugged it in, a single file appeared. Untitled. I don't remember recording it. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. At first, there was nothing but static. Then, very faintly, a sound rose beneath it. A hum. Familiar, low and patient. And then my voice spoke, calm and steady, exactly the way I sound in my videos. "Welcome back," it said softly. "Tonight's story begins in a tunnel." I shut the recorder off instantly, my hands shaking. In the silence that followed, I realized something that made my blood run cold. The tunnel didn't need me to stay behind. It just needed one recording to survive. And somewhere, someone was already listening. I sat there for a long time after turning the recorder off, listening to the quiet of my apartment. No hum. No whispers. Just the low sound of traffic outside and the ticking clock on the wall. I kept waiting for the darkness to feel different, heavier, like the tunnel had followed me home. But it didn't. At least, not in the way I feared. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of nightmares, but because my mind kept circling the same question. If the tunnel could live inside a recording, then what really ended it? Was it buried under stone, or had we only closed one door while leaving another cracked open? By morning, I made a decision. I wiped everything. Every file. Every backup. Every draft. Not just the recorder from the tunnel, but my entire library of Sleeptime stories, creepy horror narrations, and bedtime content. Years of work, gone with a few clicks. It felt like erasing a part of myself, but also like setting something free. Or maybe trapping it. I wasn't sure. Ben didn't argue when I told him. He just nodded, relief softening his face. "I was hoping you'd say that," he admitted. "I've been hearing things at night. Not voices. Just echoes." Lena took longer to respond. She stared at me, searching my face like she was making sure I was real. "You understand why I chose you, right?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Because I listened." "And because you taught others to listen too," she said. Mark recovered faster than any of us expected. Therapy helped. Distance helped more. He moved away from a city, somewhere with open skies and no tunnels. He texted me once, months later, just to say he'd started hiking, staying above ground, breathing easier. I didn't reply with questions. Some things didn't need digging into. As for the tunnel, It faded into rumor again. A collapsed passage. An unsafe structure. A place sealed off by authorities. The stories online dried up. Fewer comments. Fewer late-night emails about screams and echoes. The silence felt earned. I tried to move on. I took a normal job. I filled my evenings with light, music, conversation, noise that didn't leave room for whispers. For a while it worked. The fear softened into something distant, like a bad dream you remember without feeling. Then one evening, while scrolling aimlessly, I came across a video recommendation. The thumbnail was dark, grainy. A tunnel entrance, half lit by a shaking flashlight. The title made my chest tighten. We followed the screams echoing through the tunnel, true bedtime horror story. The channel name wasn't familiar. My finger hovered over the screen. Every instinct I had screamed not to click, to keep the silence intact, to let the story die where it should have. I clicked anyway. The video started with static. Then, a low hum, almost too quiet to notice unless you were listening for it. The narrator's voice came in slow and calm. It wasn't mine. That's what unsettled me the most. The voice belonged to someone else. Different tone, different pacing. But the structure was the same. The rhythm. The way it invited the listener closer, gently, like a hand extended in the dark. This is a Sleeptime story, the voice said. So listen carefully. I shut the video off before it could go any further. That was when I finally understood. The tunnel wasn't a place. It was a pattern. It didn't survive because of one recording or one voice. It survived because people followed screams. Because they leaned toward mystery instead of away from it. Because fear feels meaningful when shared. We hadn't destroyed it. We'd just broken its connection to us. And maybe that was enough. I didn't report the video. I didn't comment. I didn't watch another second. Attention was its food, and I wasn't willing to feed it anymore. I let the algorithm move on. Let the story find its own ending, without me. Sometimes, late at night, when the world goes quiet, I still think about the tunnel. About the way it waited. About how close I came to agreeing. I think about how easy it is to confuse curiosity with kindness, listening with understanding. Fear doesn't need to be chased to be felt. Stories don't need to be entered to be heard. And not every scream is a call for help. Some are warnings. If you're listening to this now, maybe getting ready for sleep, maybe letting your guard down as the day fades, I want you to remember one thing. Darkness doesn't always rush at you. Sometimes it waits patiently, whispering softly, hoping you'll take one more step toward it. You don't have to. You can turn away. You can choose silence. Because the safest bedtime stories are the ones that end. And this one does.